The air inside Anderson Enterprises had grown thick with tension. Mr. Thompson's relentless cost-cutting measures had left the staff demoralized and overworked. Ms. Johnson, the Vice President of Human Resources, found herself at the heart of this storm, constantly navigating the demands of an uncompromising director and the needs of increasingly dissatisfied employees. Mr. Thompson's office, stark and minimalist, reflected his rigid personality. Every item in its place, not a single paper out of order. He sat behind his large mahogany desk, a picture of stern determination. "Ms. Johnson," he said without looking up from his computer, "we need to cut costs further. The cleaning budget is still too high. Find a way to lower it." Ms. Johnson suppressed a sigh. "Sir, we've already reduced the wages significantly. It's nearly impossible to find anyone willing to work for what we're offering." And Thompson finally looked up, his gaze cold and unyielding. "Then offer less. There are always people desperate enough to take whatever they can get." She hesitated, knowing that any argument would be futile. "I'll see what I can do," she replied, her voice tight with frustration. The sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the streets. Outside Anderson Enterprises, Caroline moved with practiced efficiency, sorting through recyclable materials. Her movements were precise, her expression calm and focused. She barely noticed the imposing building behind her, its glass facade glinting in the fading light. Mr. Thompson happened to glance out of his office window and spotted her. The sight of the neatly dressed woman diligently collecting trash sparked an idea. A sly smile curved his lips as he turned back to his desk. "Ms. Johnson, I believe I've found a solution to our cleaning problem," he announced. Ms. Johnson looked up, puzzled. "Sir?" "There's a woman outside by the dumpsters. Bring her in. If she's willing to work, we'll hire her. She can't possibly demand much." Reluctantly, Ms. Johnson called for a security guard to fetch Caroline. A few minutes later, the guard led her into the building. Caroline walked with an air of quiet dignity, her eyes scanning the surroundings with keen interest. When Caroline entered Mr. Thompson's office, he addressed her slowly and deliberately, over-enunciating each word. "Do you want a job?" Caroline read his lips and nodded, her expression neutral. She understood the importance of this opportunity, despite the disdain in his tone. "Good," he said, pleased. "You'll start immediately. Ms. Johnson will give you the details." Ms. Johnson, watching this exchange, felt a pang of sympathy for Caroline. She could see that despite her circumstances, Caroline carried herself with quiet strength and dignity. It was a quality that stood in stark contrast to Mr. Thompson's condescending attitude. As Caroline was led away to begin her duties, Ms. Johnson approached Thompson cautiously. "Sir, if I may suggest, perhaps we could—" "There's no need for suggestions, Miss Johnson," Thompson interrupted. "Just make sure she knows what to do." Ms. Johnson bit back her retort and nodded. "Yes, sir." The sun had barely risen when Caroline arrived at Anderson Enterprises. Her first day on the job filled her with a mixture of apprehension and determination. She entered the gleaming lobby with its marble floors and pristine glass walls, feeling the weight of expectations on her shoulders. Caroline's tasks were clear. Ensure the office was spotless by the time the employees arrived. She moved through the corridors like a ghost, her movements fluid and efficient. She scrubbed, dusted, and polished every surface with meticulous care. The silence around her was comforting, a stark contrast to the bustling city outside. As the morning wore on, employees began to trickle in. They noticed the sparkling cleanliness of the office and whispered amongst themselves. Some were impressed, but others were less kind. They knew Caroline was deaf and saw it as an opportunity to mock her without fear of being overheard. "Look at her," one employee sneered, his voice low but dripping with contempt. "She probably doesn't even know how to clean properly." His companion chuckled. "Yeah, and she can't even hear us. What a joke." Caroline, though unable to hear their words, sensed the derision in their glances and body language. She kept her head down and focused on her work, drawing strength from thoughts of her pets waiting for her at home. During lunch breaks, Caroline would retreat to a small corner of the building where she could sit quietly and enjoy a brief respite. One day, Ms. Johnson found her there, eating a simple meal of bread and cheese. "You're doing a great job, Carolyn," Ms. Johnson said, making sure Caroline could read her lips. Caroline looked up, her eyes softening with gratitude. "Thank you," she replied quietly. Ms. Johnson sat down beside her. "If anyone gives you a hard time, you let me know, okay?" Caroline nodded, appreciating the kindness. Despite the challenges, she felt a growing sense of belonging in the clean, orderly environment she helped maintain. After work, Caroline would walk the long distance back to her home on the outskirts of the city. The abandoned house stood isolated, surrounded by overgrown weeds and rusting fences. Yet inside, it was a haven of warmth and love. Her pets greeted her enthusiastically, their tails wagging and purrs filling the air. There were 3 cats, Mittens, Whiskers, and Shadow, and 2 dogs, Max and Bella. Caroline had found each of them abandoned or lost, much like herself. Together, they formed a makeshift family that provided her with endless comfort and joy. She fed them first, making sure they had enough to eat before taking care of herself. Caroline's dinner was usually simple: a piece of bread, some cheese, and water. But the love and affection from her pets made every meal feel like a feast. In the quiet of her home, Caroline would often reflect on her day. The mockery she faced at work was painful, but it was a small price to pay for the stability and security the job provided. She knew she was making a difference, even if few appreciated her efforts. The bond between Caroline and her pets was a source of profound emotional strength. They were her confidants, her solace in an often harsh world. Every wag of a tail, every soft purr reminded her that she was loved and needed. Back at the company, the tension between employees and management continued to simmer. Ms. Johnson watched Caroline's interactions with others closely, noting the disdain from some and the growing respect from a few. As the weeks passed, the office continued to sparkle under Caroline's diligent care. Slowly, some employees began to appreciate her efforts, though few expressed it openly. Caroline's presence was becoming an integral part of Anderson Enterprises, setting the stage for the changes that were yet to come. The atmosphere at Anderson Enterprises grew increasingly strained. Mr. Thompson's relentless demands for cost-cutting measures created a pervasive sense of anxiety among the employees. His presence was like a dark cloud hanging over the office, casting shadows of doubt and discontent. The once vibrant and bustling office had turned into a place of muted conversations and nervous glances. Employees kept their heads down, focusing on their tasks to avoid drawing Thompson's ire. The pressure to perform under his exacting standards was taking its toll on everyone. Thompson's interactions with the staff were terse and transactional. He saw them not as individuals but as cogs in the machine of profitability. His dissatisfaction was palpable, particularly towards Caroline. Despite her meticulous work, Thompson found fault in everything she did. "Miss Johnson," he barked one morning, "this place is still not up to standard. I want it spotless." Ms. Johnson, who had grown weary of his constant complaints, responded with a forced calm. "Caroline has been doing an excellent job, sir. The office has never looked cleaner." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "That may be your opinion, Ms. Johnson, but I expect perfection. Make sure she knows that." Ms. Johnson nodded, her frustration barely concealed. She knew that no matter how hard Caroline worked, it would never be enough for Thompson. Caroline, unaware of Thompson's ongoing dissatisfaction, continued her routine with unwavering dedication. Her only solace was the thought of her pets waiting for her at home, their unconditional love a balm for the day's stresses. One afternoon, as Caroline was cleaning the conference room, Thompson stormed in, his expression thunderous. "This is unacceptable," he shouted, pointing at a barely visible smudge on the table. Caroline paused, reading his lips. She nodded and quickly cleaned the spot, her hands trembling slightly. Thompson huffed and turned on his heel, leaving the room in a huff. In the break room, the employees whispered amongst themselves. "He's going to drive us all crazy," one muttered. "How can anyone work like this?" "I heard he's been giving Caroline a hard time too," another said sympathetically. "She's doing her best, but he won't let up." Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson, the company president, had been observing the growing discontent from a distance. He was deeply troubled by the reports he was receiving about Thompson's management style. Determined to get to the bottom of the issue, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Late one evening, after most of the employees had left, Anderson met with a security consultant in his office. "I need to install cameras throughout the office," he said, his voice low and resolute. "I want to see what's really going on here." The consultant nodded. "We can have it set up by tomorrow evening, sir. No one will know." Anderson leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "Good. I need to protect this company and its employees. Thompson's actions are affecting morale, and I won't stand for it." As the days passed, the tension in the office became almost unbearable. Thompson's unreasonable demands and harsh criticisms created a hostile work environment. Employees were on edge, afraid of making mistakes and facing his wrath. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Caroline sat in her small, cluttered living room with her pets nestled around her. She stroked Max's fur absently, her mind replaying the events of the day. Tears welled in her eyes as she thought about Thompson's harsh words and the overwhelming sense of inadequacy they instilled in her. "Why can't he see how hard I'm trying?" she whispered to the silent room. "Why can't anyone see?" Her pets, sensing her distress, nuzzled closer, offering their silent support. Caroline drew strength from their presence, determined to face another day with the same dedication and grace that had always defined her. Mr. Anderson, the president of the company, sat in his office late one night, reviewing the surveillance footage he had secretly commissioned. The grainy black and white images painted a vivid picture of the office dynamics. He watched as Mr. Thompson berated employees over trivial matters, his temper flaring without reason. Anderson's frown deepened as he observed the toxic environment Thompson had fostered. One night, as Anderson pored over the footage, something caught his eye. Caroline, the seemingly invisible cleaner, was meticulously organizing files on Thompson's desk and wrote something. Her movements were efficient and purposeful, her expression one of quiet concentration. "Who is this woman?" Anderson muttered to himself. He rewound the footage and watched again. There was something about her that piqued his curiosity. The next morning, Anderson decided to investigate further. He summoned Ms. Johnson to his office. "Ms. Johnson, I need to know more about our cleaning staff. Specifically, Caroline," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Ms. Johnson nodded, her surprise evident. "Caroline is one of the most hard-working individuals we have, sir. Despite the way she's been treated, she's never once complained." Anderson leaned back in his chair, pondering. "I want to meet her. Arrange a time when she can come to my office." Later that day, Caroline found herself standing nervously outside Mr. Anderson's office. Ms. Johnson had informed her of the meeting, and though Caroline was puzzled, she complied without question. She entered the office, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Caroline," Anderson began, offering a warm smile. "Please, have a seat." She sat down, her eyes scanning his lips to catch every word. "I've noticed your hard work and dedication. It hasn't gone unnoticed." Caroline blushed slightly, nodding in acknowledgement. "Thank you, sir. I've also seen some of your organizational skills," Anderson continued, choosing his words carefully. "I'd like to know more about your background. How did you come to work here?" Caroline took a deep breath and began to share her story. She spoke of her struggles, her love for learning, and her unfortunate circumstances that led her to Anderson Enterprises. Anderson listened intently, his respect for her growing with each passing moment. A few days later, Anderson was going through a stack of development plans when he noticed something odd. One plan, meticulously detailed and exceptionally well thought out, stood out among the rest. The handwriting was neat, almost feminine. He frowned, trying to recall who had submitted it. Just then, Mr. Thompson walked into the office, his usual air of arrogance in tow. "Reviewing the development plans, I see," he said, a smug smile on his face. "I put a lot of effort into those." Anderson's eyes narrowed. "Did you now? And this one?" He held up the standout plan. "This doesn't look like your handwriting." Thompson's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before he recovered. "Oh, that one. I had some assistance with it. But the ideas are mine." Anderson's suspicion grew. He remembered Caroline's detailed work on the footage. Could it be? "Let's get to the bottom of this," Anderson said, his voice firm. "Ms. Johnson, could you bring Caroline to my office?" When Caroline entered, her eyes flickered between Anderson and Thompson, sensing the tension. Anderson handed her the development plan. "Caroline, do you recognize this?" he asked gently. She nodded slowly, her eyes meeting his. "Yes, sir. I wrote it." Thompson's face turned a deep shade of red. "That's preposterous. She's just a cleaner." Anderson held up a hand to silence him. "Caroline, can you explain your thought process behind this plan?" Caroline nodded and began to explain, her passion and knowledge shining through with every word. Anderson listened, impressed by her insight and expertise. It was clear she had a profound understanding of the company's needs and potential. When she finished, Anderson turned to Thompson, his expression cold. "Mr. Thompson, it's evident that you've been taking credit for Caroline's work. This is unacceptable." Thompson spluttered, trying to find a defense, but Anderson cut him off. "Pack your things. You're no longer needed here." The atmosphere at Anderson Enterprises was charged with anticipation. The news of Mr. Thompson's dismissal had spread like wildfire, leaving the employees both relieved and curious about the future leadership. The whispers in the hallways carried a mix of hope and uncertainty as everyone awaited the official announcement. The boardroom was filled with murmurs as the employees gathered for an emergency meeting called by Mr. Anderson. The large windows let in the morning light, casting a hopeful glow over the room. Caroline stood at the back, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had been informed of the meeting, but not the specifics of what was to be announced. Mr. Anderson entered the room, his presence commanding immediate attention. He moved to the head of the table, his expression a blend of seriousness and optimism. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice steady and clear. "As many of you know, Mr. Thompson has been relieved of his duties. His actions and attitude were not in line with the values we uphold at Anderson Enterprises." A murmur of agreement swept through the room. Anderson's eyes scanned the faces of his employees, noting the mixture of relief and curiosity. "I am pleased to announce," he continued, "that we have appointed a new executive director who embodies the qualities of integrity, dedication, and a deep understanding of our company's needs." He paused, letting the suspense build for a moment. Caroline will be stepping into this role, effective immediately. Gasps of surprise and nods of approval echoed around the room. Caroline, standing at the back, felt a wave of emotions wash over her. She took a deep breath and stepped forward as Anderson motioned for her to join him. Caroline approached the front of the room, her heart beating rapidly. She looked around at the faces of her colleagues, some of whom had mocked her, others who had shown her kindness. Today, their expressions were filled with a newfound respect. "Thank you, Mr. Anderson," she began, her voice steady. "I am honored by this opportunity and committed to working hard for the betterment of Anderson Enterprises and all of its employees." She glanced at the familiar faces, seeing their respect and curiosity. "I believe that together we can create a work environment that is not only productive, but also supportive and inclusive." Ms. Johnson was the first to applaud, her face beaming with pride. The rest of the employees quickly joined in, the room filling with the sound of genuine applause. As the applause died down, Anderson took the floor again. "Caroline's journey with us is a testament to the power of perseverance and integrity. She has demonstrated that true leadership comes from understanding and empathy." He turned to Caroline, his expression warm. "We are confident in your abilities, Caroline, and we look forward to seeing the positive changes you will bring." After the meeting, employees gathered around Caroline, congratulating her and expressing their support. The change in their attitude was palpable. They no longer saw her as just a cleaner, but as a capable leader who had earned her position through hard work and dedication. Later that day, Caroline settled into her new office. The room, once occupied by Thompson, now felt lighter and more welcoming. She arranged her few personal items on the desk, feeling a sense of both pride and responsibility. Ms. Johnson knocked on the door, peeking in with a smile. "How does it feel to be in the big chair?" Caroline laughed softly. "Overwhelming, but good. Thank you for believing in me, Ms. Johnson." "You've earned this, Caroline. We're all behind you," Ms. Johnson said warmly. Caroline's first order of business was to address the immediate concerns of the employees. She called for a town hall meeting where everyone could voice their concerns and suggestions. The atmosphere was open and collaborative, a stark contrast to the fear and tension that had permeated under Thompson's rule. During the meeting, one employee raised their hand. "Caroline, how do you plan to improve our work environment?" Caroline nodded thoughtfully. "First, we need to rebuild trust. I'm here to listen and act on your feedback. Together we can create policies that support both our professional goals and personal well-being." Another employee spoke up. "What about the budget cuts? Will there be changes?" "We will review the budget and make adjustments where necessary," Caroline assured them. "Our priority is to ensure that everyone feels valued and adequately compensated for their work." As the days passed, Caroline's leadership began to take effect. She implemented open-door policies, encouraging employees to share their ideas and concerns directly. Anderson Enterprises was buzzing with a new energy. The oppressive atmosphere that once lingered like a dark cloud had been replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. Under Caroline's leadership, the company was poised for a transformation that would touch every corner of its operation. The office, now filled with natural light and a renewed sense of purpose, was a hive of activity. Desks were bustling with employees engaged in collaborative discussions, brainstorming sessions, and productive work. The walls, which once seemed to close in with tension, now echoed with the sounds of teamwork and camaraderie. Caroline's open-door policy was a breath of fresh air. Employees felt heard and valued, and their respect for her grew with each passing day. She made it a point to walk the floors regularly, engaging with everyone, from the junior staff to senior managers. One morning, as she made her rounds, she stopped by a group of employees gathered around a table, animatedly discussing a new project. "How's the project coming along?" Caroline asked, her smile warm and genuine. "Really well, Caroline," one of them replied. "Thanks to the resources you allocated, we're ahead of schedule." "That's great," she said. "Keep up the good work. If you need anything else, just let me know." Caroline's relationship with Mr. Anderson also evolved. Anderson admired Caroline's insight and her ability to inspire the team. One afternoon, they were in a meeting, reviewing the latest performance metrics. "Caroline, these numbers are impressive," Anderson said, his tone filled with genuine admiration. "Revenue is up, and employee turnover has decreased significantly." Caroline nodded, a sense of pride swelling within her. "It's a team effort, Mr. Anderson. Everyone has contributed to this success." Anderson smiled. "Please, call me John. You've earned it." They shared a moment of mutual respect, their partnership strengthening with each success. As the weeks turned into months, Anderson Enterprises began to thrive. The changes implemented by Caroline had a profound impact. Productivity soared, and the company started to attract top talent eager to be part of a positive and innovative work environment. The break room, once a place of whispered complaints, now buzzed with lively conversations and laughter. The employees felt a renewed sense of purpose, and their enthusiasm was palpable. One day, Caroline decided to host an informal town hall meeting. She stood in front of her team, her heart swelling with pride as she looked at the faces of her colleagues, now friends. "I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work and dedication," she began. "We've come a long way, and it's because of you that we're seeing such positive changes. Let's keep pushing forward. Together." The room erupted in applause, the sound a testament to the collective effort and spirit that Caroline had fostered. Caroline's influence extended beyond just the morale of the company. She introduced innovative strategies that streamlined operations and opened new avenues for growth. Her knack for identifying potential issues before they became problems was invaluable. During one strategy session with John, Caroline presented a new initiative aimed at expanding the company's market reach. "By leveraging our existing resources and tapping into these emerging markets, we can significantly boost our revenue," she explained, pointing to the detailed charts she had prepared. John listened intently, his respect for Caroline deepening. "Your foresight is remarkable, Caroline. Let's move forward with this plan." The positive changes in the company mirrored the personal growth Caroline experienced. Her journey from a marginalized cleaner to a respected leader was a testament to her resilience and strength. The bond she formed with her colleagues and with John was rooted in mutual respect and admiration. One evening, as Caroline was leaving the office, John approached her. "Caroline, I wanted to thank you personally for everything you've done," he said, his voice sincere. "You've not only transformed this company, but also inspired us all." Caroline smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "Thank you, John. It means a lot to hear that." At home, Caroline's life was equally fulfilling. Her pets continued to be a source of joy and comfort, grounding her amidst the challenges and successes at work. Each evening, she would sit in her cozy living room, reflecting on the day's events and planning for the future. The success of Anderson Enterprises was more than just a professional achievement for Caroline. It was the gateway to a new chapter in her personal life. The bond she had formed with John Anderson had grown deeper and more meaningful, evolving from mutual respect to something much more profound. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, enjoying the serene view of the garden, John turned to Caroline, his eyes filled with affection. "Caroline, there's something I've been meaning to ask you," he began, reaching into his pocket. Caroline looked at him, curiosity and anticipation mingling in her gaze. John knelt down, presenting a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" Tears of joy filled Caroline's eyes as she nodded. "Yes, John, 1,000 times yes." The weeks that followed were filled with preparations for their wedding. The house buzzed with activity as friends and family pitched in to help. The garden, already beautiful, was transformed into a picturesque venue for the ceremony. Caroline found herself swept up in the joy and excitement of planning. She chose a simple, elegant dress that made her feel like a princess. John, always supportive, was by her side, sharing in every decision and ensuring that everything was perfect. On the day of the wedding, the garden was bathed in soft, golden light. Friends, family, and colleagues from Anderson Enterprises gathered to celebrate the union of two people whose love had touched everyone around them. As Caroline walked down the aisle, her heart swelled with happiness. She saw John waiting for her, his smile radiant. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt vows, promises of love and support, and the sound of joyous applause as they were pronounced husband and wife. After the wedding, Caroline and John settled into a life that was both fulfilling and harmonious. They continued to support each other in their professional endeavors while making time to nurture their personal relationship. Their home became a haven of love and laughter. Caroline's pets, who had always been a source of comfort, now had a larger family to adore them. The house was often filled with the sounds of playful barks and contented purrs, a testament to the warmth and happiness that permeated every corner. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, John turned to Caroline, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I've been thinking, Caroline. What do you think about starting a family of our own?" Caroline's heart skipped a beat. She had always dreamed of having a family, and the idea of sharing that dream with John filled her with joy. "I would love that, John," she replied softly, her eyes shining with hope. Their decision to start a family brought a new kind of excitement into their lives. They discussed their hopes and dreams, imagining the future they would build together. The prospect of welcoming a new life into their home filled them with a sense of purpose and anticipation. As they prepared for this new chapter, Caroline and John continued to grow closer. Their shared experiences at Anderson Enterprises had laid a strong foundation, and their love for each other only deepened with time. One day, Caroline felt a flutter in her heart as she realized that their dream was coming true. She took John's hand, placing it gently on her belly. "John, we're going to have a baby," she whispered, tears of happiness streaming down her face. John's eyes filled with joy as he embraced her. "This is the best news, Caroline. I can't wait to start this journey with you." The months that followed were a beautiful blend of anticipation and preparation. They decorated the nursery, choosing soft colors and whimsical designs. Friends and family showered them with love and support, sharing in their joy. The day their baby was born was the culmination of their hopes and dreams. As they held their newborn child, the love and happiness in their hearts overflowed. Their home, already a place of warmth and comfort, now resonated with the gentle coos and soft cries of their little one. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains of Mr. Anderson's home, casting a warm glow over the room. Caroline awoke, feeling the gentle flutter of their unborn child, a reminder of the new life growing inside her. Beside her, John slept peacefully, his hand resting protectively over her belly. Their home, always filled with warmth and love, had become even more vibrant with the anticipation of their baby. The nursery, painted in soft pastels, was ready for the new arrival. Toys, books, and baby clothes were neatly arranged, each item a symbol of their excitement and hope for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, John took Caroline's hand. "I can't wait to see you as a mother, Caroline. You're going to be amazing." Caroline smiled, her heart full. "And you're going to be a wonderful father, John. Our baby is so lucky to have you." As Caroline's pregnancy progressed, she began to notice subtle changes in her body, beyond the usual symptoms. One morning, while John was at work, she was sitting in the living room when she heard a faint, distant sound. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the sound grew clearer. A bird singing outside the window. Caroline's heart raced. Could it be? She focused intently, straining to hear more. Slowly, other sounds began to filter through, the rustling of leaves, the distant hum of traffic. Tears filled her eyes as the realization dawned on her. She was beginning to hear again. When John returned home that evening, Caroline could hardly contain her excitement. "John, something incredible has happened," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. John looked at her, concerned. "What is it, Caroline? Are you okay?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I can hear, John. I can hear again." John's eyes widened in shock and joy. He embraced her tightly, overwhelmed by the miracle. "This is amazing, Caroline. I'm so happy for you." The days that followed were filled with wonder and discovery. Caroline marveled at the sounds she had missed for so long. The chirping of birds, the laughter of children playing outside, the soothing sound of John's voice. Each sound was a precious gift, adding a new layer of richness to her life. Their happiness was palpable. John took great joy in helping Caroline rediscover the world of sound. He would play her favorite music, describe the nuances of different sounds, and watch with delight as she experienced them for the first time. As Caroline's due date approached, their home was filled with a sense of joyful anticipation. The nursery, now complete, was a haven of love and care. They spent evenings talking about their hopes and dreams for their child, imagining the future as a family. One quiet evening, Caroline and John sat in the nursery, rocking gently in the chair they had chosen for feeding and soothing their baby. Caroline placed John's hand on her belly, where their baby kicked energetically. "Do you think the baby knows how much we love them already?" Caroline asked softly. John smiled, his eyes filled with tenderness. "I have no doubt, Caroline, this baby is surrounded by so much love already." The day finally arrived. Caroline went into labor, and John rushed her to the hospital. The delivery was long and exhausting, but Caroline drew strength from John's unwavering support and the thought of finally meeting their child. When their baby was placed in Caroline's arms for the first time, tears of joy streamed down her face. She looked at John, who was equally emotional, and together they marveled at the tiny, perfect life they had brought into the world. The following weeks were a beautiful blur of sleepless nights, diaper changes, and tender moments. Caroline and John settled into their new roles as parents with a mixture of joy and exhaustion. Their baby, a beautiful blend of them both, was the center of their world. One night, as Caroline rocked their baby to sleep, she hummed a lullaby, reveling in the sound of her own voice and the peaceful breathing of their child. John watched from the doorway, his heart full. "You're a natural, Caroline," he said softly. "I'm so proud of you." Caroline looked up, her eyes shining with love. "I couldn't do it without you, John. We're in this together." The Anderson household was filled with a vibrant energy that only a new baby could bring. The arrival of their son had completed the family in a way that Caroline and John had always dreamed of. Laughter echoed through the halls, and every corner of their home radiated warmth and love. Caroline and John's home was a sanctuary of happiness. The nursery, painted in soft blues and adorned with playful decorations, was a cozy haven for their son. The living room, often the center of family gatherings, was filled with baby toys and the comforting sounds of a happy family. Caroline's heart swelled with joy every time she looked at her son. She marveled at his tiny fingers and toes, the way his eyes sparkled with curiosity, and the soft coos that filled the room. John was a doting father, always ready with a gentle hand or a comforting word. One evening, as they sat on the couch with their son nestled between them, John turned to Caroline, his eyes filled with love. "I never imagined life could be this perfect," he said softly. "Thank you for making this dream a reality." Caroline smiled, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "We did this together, John. Our love brought us here." At Anderson Enterprises, the positive changes initiated by Caroline had taken firm root. The office was a place of innovation and collaboration, with employees feeling valued and motivated. Caroline's open-door policy had fostered a culture of transparency and trust. During a staff meeting, Caroline addressed her team. "I want to thank each of you for your hard work and dedication. Our success is a testament to our collective effort. Let's continue to push boundaries and achieve great things together." The room erupted in applause, the genuine appreciation for Caroline's leadership evident in every face. Balancing work and family was not without its challenges, but Caroline found strength in the support of her colleagues and the love of her family. Every evening, she returned home to the joyous sounds of her son's laughter and John's warm embrace. One night, after putting their son to bed, Caroline and John sat by the fireplace, enjoying a rare moment of quiet. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" John asked, his voice filled with wonder. Caroline nodded, her heart full. "Every day. I'm so grateful for our journey, and I wouldn't change a thing." Their home was a hub of family activities. Weekends were spent exploring parks, having picnics, and enjoying the simple pleasures of life. Caroline and John took delight in watching their son grow, each milestone a precious memory. During a sunny afternoon in the park, John held their son high in the air, making him giggle with delight. Caroline watched them, her heart swelling with happiness. "He's going to be just like you, John," she said, laughing. "Let's hope he gets some of your wisdom and strength," John replied, smiling. As the months turned into years, Caroline and John's family continued to thrive. Their son grew into a curious and kind-hearted child, always eager to explore the world around him. Caroline's leadership at Anderson Enterprises ensured the company's ongoing success, and her colleagues respected her not just as a boss, but as a friend and mentor. In their home, surrounded by love and laughter, Caroline and John knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together.